The three most dangerous words in any organization: not my job. If you say that, you are putting yourself in a box, you're putting a lid on it, and you're showing people that you are not a team player and you are not necessary. We all should be value seekers and value creators. And so when I talk about evolving from knowledge economy to value economy, each one of us be able to answer, what value are you bringing? What value are you providing to your organization?
Welcome to the Learn It All podcast, the show for leaders who are looking to join the growth obsessed. So if you live to learn and curiosity is your superpower, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Damon Lembi, 3-time best-selling author and CEO of Learn It, a live learning platform that has helped upskill over 2 million people. In just a moment, I'm going to be joined by Dr. Keith Keating. Now, Keith is the Chief Learning Officer at BDO, a keynote speaker, and author of 2 great books, The Trusted Learning Advisor and his most recent one, Hidden Value: Why Learning and Development is the Key to Unlocking Human Potential. Today, we're going to jump into things like how L&D needs to evolve from being an order taker to a trusted business partner, the shift from knowledge economy to a value economy, what really matters to CFOs, and why telling the right story creates way more impact than any spreadsheet ever will. And finally, the future of L&D in the era of AI. Keith, you've built your work on one core belief, that learning changes lives. Why is that?
I was a high school dropout. So for a long time, I believed what the world told me, in the sense that I wasn't smart enough. I had missed my chance. My future is going to be limited. But everything changed the day that I learned how to learn. Ironically, I do attribute some of that to my time at Learn It. That's a conversation for a different time. And so it's not just learning content per se, but it's was learning how to think differently, how to grow, how to choose a different path. And that set me down the road of being able to take control of my life. And so for me, learning gave me options. It gave me confidence. It gave me a future that I didn't think that I would be allowed to have. And so ever since, I've been able to take that past and translate it into a belief. Learning has been one of the most powerful tools that we as humans have for our transformation. So I say that learning changes lives because I know that it changed mine. And now I've built this career on helping others experience that same shift.
So I want to go back to a second. You said that you figured out how to make learning work for you, really. And all of us kind of learn differently. So what advice do you have for somebody who maybe wants to be a learner, but they haven't figured out the best way that for themselves to really retain and enjoy learning?
What worked for me was being a trainer. It was kind of that old adage, is you learn a new topic, and then having to teach it to somebody else requires you to think about it in a different way. And so I had struggled with learning because my comprehension was poor, because I never had to explain it back in a way that worked for me. I had to explain it back in a way that scholastically was required, or write it down in a paper or whatnot. And for me personally, the beauty was once I had to teach it. And so again, going back to my time at Learn It, this is the .com era, and HTML is coming out, Flash is coming out, Dreamweaver is coming out. All of these tools are coming out, and we were trying to service our clients. And so one week it's like, okay, Dreamweaver, go teach that. Well, I have to teach myself it. And so first I have to learn it. Then I have to be able to digest it and disseminate it in a way that others can also learn it. And I had realized that that's one of my superpowers, is being able to take something that I don't understand necessarily, spending time with it, and then having to teach it back so that others can learn it. So I would say, long story short, teach backs.
And there's a great way that leaders can do that as well. I mean, whether it's through a book club, or say you go take a course somewhere, and when you do a teach back, not only are you sharing your learnings with other people, it helps reinforce what you got out of that class. I mean, it's a win-win for everybody.
Learning sustainment, learning retention. I think book clubs are one of the most underrated tools that organizations can use, because individually you're having to read or listen to the content, but then you have to come back and you have to be able to explain it, articulate it. That's learning comprehension. And then you're getting others' viewpoints as well. And it's free. It's free. Minus the book.
Minus the book, which we're going to get into. You got a new great book out called Hidden Value, but you just mentioned there it is. There it is. You mentioned one superpower before, but another superpower. Well, first of all, I know you want to be Superman. I heard that, right? I grew up. If you look at my book, my first chapter is about me wanting to be Batman. So we got Batman and Superman. 25 years later, but another superpower for you is helping underdogs. So let's talk about that a little bit.
For a long time, I didn't check the boxes that society would try to put me in. I didn't have the degree. I didn't have the background. I didn't have a polished pedigree. And so for years, I saw that as a disadvantage. But over time, I realized that that gave me something else. It gave me hunger. It gave me empathy, grit, perspective. And so I had to create every opportunity that I've had. And that taught me how to listen harder, how to work smarter, how to adapt faster. And so I've learned how to see possibility maybe where others see limits. And so as a leader, it ended up shaping how I show up for others in the sense that I'm always looking for maybe voices that aren't being heard or the talent that's being overlooked because I've been that person and I still carry that lens with me in everything that I do. And so now I lead with that mindset that learning should be an equalizer for all of us. And I would say being an underdog gave me this perspective to never stop learning.
How does somebody in a huge position like you're in right now at BDO as a chief learning officer, how are you finding time to learn?
I start my day at about 5:30 in the morning, and I probably finish my work day around 7 p.m. So at the end of the day, we all have 24 hours. We have the same number of hours. It's in how we prioritize those hours. Learning can sometimes just be a 15-minute interval. It doesn't have to be a specific formalized program where I'm sitting in a classroom at a certain amount of time. I mean, we all have our smart devices at this point. We all have access to Gen AI, which is a great democratizer for access to education. So to sum that up, I would say I make space and time for it. And I'm consistently curious and asking questions.
Which a lot of great leaders are curious, asking questions, open minded, and being intentional around finding time. I'm similar to you. Even if it's 15 to 20 minutes every morning, just reading something, there's always ways to find time. Now, let's get to your book, Hidden Values. I know it came out in June of this year. What inspired you to write it and why now?
I have been in the industry for a really long time, as you have, and I have experienced feeling like I've not been valued, that I'm having to constantly fight for recognition, a place at the table, having a voice. And I've experienced this with a lot of my colleagues in the industry as well. Over the last number of years, I have been in different positions that have allowed me to elevate my experience, my exposure, my expertise. And I love what we do. I absolutely love it. To me, again, learning changes lives. I've got a Post-it note that I keep next to my laptop to always remind me of this. I feel like I am one of the few that are still truly passionate about our work and am not burnt out with it because I've been able to tap into this concept of value and be in situations where I can articulate the value, but I also feel extremely valuable. And I want for every single practitioner in talent development, learning development, HR to feel that same feeling of value, that what we do matters. We make a difference. I think as humans, We all want that. So reason number one is I want to re-inspire. I want to help our industry fall back in love with what we do. Reason number two is that I believe that we're at this crossroads right now in our evolution as workers, not just in talent development, but in general. So over the last number of years, we've heard about this knowledge economy. And the knowledge economy existed based on this idea that knowledge is our currency. Still true, but again, with these devices, with Gen AI, with ChatGPT has more knowledge than I will ever have. It's not necessarily wiser than us, but it has more knowledge than us. So this idea of just knowledge alone is no longer relevant or is not going to be relevant. Now it's how do you take your knowledge coupled with your expertise and your skills, coupled with these types of tools that make us more efficient, more effective, and how do you create value from this?
So you were saying a moment ago that L&D practitioners are burnt out, maybe feel overwhelmed or just not even heard anymore. What do you think's really caused that?
Since we began, if you go back to the Industrial Revolution, where manufacturing and managers needed workers to do something. So I need you to move this widget over here. They would tell us, and we would go and teach the workers how to do that. So we started historically as order takers. This concept started to evolve when we added value, probably around the 1960s, 70s, maybe 80s, as the workforce started to transform a bit more. But we never really got out of that rut as order takers because we didn't necessarily have the skills back then. As we started to develop those skills, some of us, then L&D, you hear this like, oh, I'm cycled through, I came from the business, L&D is a dumping ground. And then we started to lose a little bit of credibility from that perspective in terms of the skills. So the short answer is, I think that we've largely operated as order takers. We sit, we wait for that order to come in. When it comes in, we execute, we give it back. 6 months later, they come back and say, hey, that didn't fix the problem. You all don't have any value. And we're like, well, we're doing what you told us to do. So long story short, it's the fact that as an industry, I think that we're still stuck in that order taker mindset rather than that strategic business partner or trusted learning advisor mindset.
And also in basically you say defense mode, right? Where you're
Yeah.
reactive, things get thrown on you, you get stuck in that. So how do we help the L&D community make that shift from defense mode to being, let's say, value creators?
Well, step one
Is read your book.
is start with a trusted learning advisor, and then you move into hidden value for step two. But beyond that, I would say it's a shift from delivering content to solving problems. I don't consider myself really an L&D person. If you caught me on the street and you asked me what I do, I would tell you I solve problems for organizations. I solve problems for humans with learning. Organizations will always have problems. Half of what I do as a CLO actually has nothing to do with learning. I'm not in this little box that is just saying this is learning and development and this is all I do. All I do is create training. I am a business partner. I am a therapist. I'm sometimes an admin. I make reservations. I do what my stakeholders need at that moment to build a relationship with them, to help build the trust. So it's not about doing more from a learning perspective. In my opinion, it's understanding more about the business. It's asking what problems are we trying to solve instead of what course is it that you need. It's taking a shift from more than just tools and frameworks that we've historically relied on. It's the courage to stop saying yes to every order that comes in. It's the courage to challenge the assumptions that exist from our stakeholders because their default mindset is you're an order taker. So we have to work harder to change that mindset. It's about creating a better partnership within the business and not just one business line or two, but all of the business lines. One of the greatest value propositions I believe that we offer is being a connector in the organization. If you think about the other supporting services, IT, HR, marketing, they tend to sit in this silo. We have an opportunity in talent development to be embedded across all of the organization. So that when this business partner, this service line has a problem, we know that could be connected to this other service line over here, and we can make that connection for them. Should be connected to CFOs, which we'll talk about. We should be connected to IT. We should be connected to as many stakeholders as we can so that we're out of this isolation, out of this mindset of what we are doing is what we think we should be doing. I think that's one of the biggest shifts, and it took me years to figure this out. It's like if you think about your annual strategy, your annual planning for the next year. It happens usually around October. We get in a room and we start thinking about what do we need to focus on next year? That should not be our decision. Because if we're sitting in a room thinking about that in a siloed event, we're thinking about what's important to us. In my opinion, it's never about what's important to us. It's about what's important to the business. What does the business need? So for us setting our yearly strategy, it starts with figuring out what's their strategy. What are they focusing on next year? What problems are they trying to solve? And how can we help them? So long story short, what does it take? Courage, partnership, a belief that we can be better, that we can evolve.
And I like what you say in your book, and you talk about you got to stop speaking like L&D language and start thinking and speaking business language. And when it comes to these different stakeholders, for somebody in L&D who's never done that before, should they start with finance, CFOs, and that area, or what's the lowest hanging fruit to kind of get in and test the waters with trying to shift that mind shift and being part of the business solution?
Who makes the money? And how? So I guess the first question I would encourage you to ask is, how does your organization make money? And typically it's not going to be through one channel. So there's going to be multiple streams. So your revenue stream is always the biggest bang for the buck, the biggest return that you're going to get. So figure out, how does your organization make money? How do the business service lines make money? And start by understanding them, understanding their business. I would not just go directly to them. I would start with Gen AI.
Yeah. Deep
Do your
research.
research. Yeah. Yes, deep research. Then talk to your other colleagues in your team to figure out who has worked with them before. Then I would reach out to my business partners and I would say things like, can you share with me your annual strategy or your last quarter review or reports? And it lets them know that you're trying to do your research without just going to them and saying, okay, tell me about your business. If you have to go to them and say, tell me about your business, you haven't done your homework. You want to do all of your homework beforehand so that when you go to them, you're already using their language. And then it's okay to ask more questions, but you've got to have that foundation to be built upon. In terms of the CFO piece, so I think step one is the business, because the business is where the money's coming from.
I want to let me stop you for 1 second, because what you said, Keith, is really, really important for everybody out there who is in sales. Before you go out and meet with a prospect or a customer and just say what's going on with your business, what outcomes you have, you got to do exactly what Keith's saying. Go in, do deep research, understand, and bring that to the table with even maybe a point of view, a perspective coming in the door, instead of just sitting back saying, hey, what challenges are you, what's going on? What's your initiative? Come prepared and be proactive. So I just wanted to throw it out in there, but I didn't mean to cut you off.
Your point there about point of view is absolutely critical. Order takers don't have a point of view. They sit back and they wait for something to come in and then they respond to it. Strategic business partners, and this isn't just for L&D, strategic business partners have a point of view. And you have a point of view based on your research externally, then combined with your research internally. And that includes understanding what problems is that service line, that business partner trying to solve. And you can typically find that even if you have to go up to the organizational level. Organizations tend to have goals that they're working towards each year. So you can start with those. It might be easier even to access that. But honestly, with Gen AI at this point, it is a game changer in being able to create this synthesis of customer approach or business partner approach, stakeholder approach.
There's no more excuse for it. So let's go back to where you were touching on with CFOs.
Absolutely. CFO should be one of your key stakeholders. So I think, especially in learning development, we often overlook the peripheral stakeholders that should be included. I was one of these. For years, I avoided the CFO or finance because I was terrified of them. We hear often finance cuts are totally drew a blank. Finance cuts our budgets. And so we want to avoid them because if they don't see us, maybe they won't cut our budget. This stuck with me for so long that it actually became my doctoral research. So if you're curious about that, it's free. It's out there, University of Pennsylvania. Just Google it, Google myself, CFO. And so I was studying CFOs to understand what value, or if there's value, do they find in learning and development in their organization? And how does the budget process work? And my question was, are you cutting our budgets purposefully? And the short answer is no, they're not. In fact, many of them didn't even really know where our budget was. They couldn't tell me what the learning budget was because it's buried in different areas. So it depends. Is it centralized, decentralized? Are the budgets hybrid? Anyway, different story. You can Google that, get it for free. It'll definitely put you to sleep. So just check, go to the last chapter.
No, you can throw it in the chat GPT and pull the best parts out of it.
Absolutely. Or Notebook LM if you want to hear two people talk about it. So long story short, CFOs or finance should be one of the stakeholders that we work with. And here's why. The role of the CFO is to know the value of every business unit in the organization and then to create more value from it. So if you've never spoken with CFO and you're a leader in learning, or you have never met with finance to talk about how do you measure value? How do you measure our value? Well, if you haven't spoken with them and you're the learning leader, chances are they're not measuring your value. And by the way, sending them your ROI, your Phillips ROI Excel spreadsheet, that's not going to work either. If you've ever looked at financial statements, you'll never see our Phillips ROI statement on there, even if you've sent it. And there's a reason, because that does not translate to how they quantify and qualify value. So we've spent decades and decades avoiding the CFO, complaining over here, oh, nobody thinks we're valuable, nobody knows what we do. Build the relationship with them. Reach out to them proactively and ask, how do you quantify our value? What type of measurement would work for you so that we know how to track this in a way that's meaningful for you? They want this. It's just not their priority.
And what are some of the responses you think when you ask them that question you get from the CFO?
In terms of how do you quantify value?
Or what are some of the big pain points that they believe that they can connect learning into solving?
So if I go back to my research, there was this theory from the CFOs that learning has value. And then when I dug down to the question that you're asking, it was like, oh, well, you can help onboard people. You can help do some leadership stuff. And what I started to unpack was they don't really know what we do. They don't really know how we can provide value other than their own context. And so the responses were more about, well, when I was earlier in my career, I went through this program and that was very helpful to me. Or earlier in my career, I went through a program and it was not helpful to me. It was an absolute waste of my time. So the piece that I took away from that is it's also important to ask these stakeholders like the CFO, tell me about your experience with learning and development in your past. Based on their answers, you can get some insight into what their belief might be in terms of whether or not they see value in it.
I like that one quote that you brought up, which is important. Maybe you could share it about where the CFO says they have so many fires. Why do they even care?
Yes. So one of the CFOs I talked to, and we were talking about value, and he said, look, in theory, I know learning is important. I would never tell you differently. Nobody's going to tell you learning is not important. But in reality, I have so many fires at my feet that I can't care about what you care about. And this was such a beautiful moment for me, and I think for all of us in learning and development, because here's something that I rarely ever considered. We get paid to care about learning and development. And then we expect everybody else to care about as much as we do, expect everybody to drop what they're doing and make this their priority. But flip that for a minute. Think about IT. Think about all of those annoying IT updates that you get. And you're in the middle of doing something and you're like, oh, God, I've got to reboot again.
Totally.
I don't want to reboot right now. Make this stop. Well, that IT person is feeling the exact same thing that we feel. Why don't they care about this? This is the most important thing to me. So, long story short, we have to check our ego a little bit in how passionate we are about this, in the fact that not everybody else is going to feel as passionate. They can if we help them understand why this is so valuable for them. And so, with that stakeholder with the fires, he also said, I would love to have a relationship with you. I just don't have time. I don't have time to care. If you can come to me and you can make me understand why this is valuable for me or for the firm, then I'm going to care. And so that was the aha moment of, oh my gosh, we should actually be building relationships and not avoiding these people. They're not the scary ones.
Because what you're saying is a lot of times L&D, they'll avoid the CFO because they're afraid that the budget will get cut. So maybe they'll wait till the budget gets approved, but that's really not the case. I think you said another one of the big aha moments for you as well was that the CFOs, it wasn't all just about data. They also cared about stories.
Yes. So that was a big aha because, like most, I send an Excel spreadsheet. And here's the other mistake that we make that you just brought up. We do sometimes talk to them when we want something, when we want more money from them. And so that was the other uncovering the research is they're saying, don't just come to me when you want something from me, when you want money from me. And that works for all of us. If you think about your vendors and your suppliers, one of my biggest pet peeves is when that contract is coming to a close and then you reach out and then you want to take me to lunch. And it's like, boom, oh, my contract must be coming up soon. Instead, if you act or treat me with that kindness and that curiosity 6 months, a year before that, that's going to feel more authentic. And we need to treat our CFOs or finance the same way. Don't wait till budget season to reach out and try and befriend them. We should be doing this on a reoccurring basis.
Is there anything else you can do to help support beyond just L&D? You talked about this before, CFOs. So, instead of just reaching out for, money or budgets, what else can somebody do in L&D to help out a CFO?
Let me come back to that because I realized I didn't answer your other question about the story versus the data piece. So that was a big aha. I was under the impression that they just wanted Excel spreadsheets. And through my research, they would say, don't just send me your Excel spreadsheet because I don't know what any of that means. And again, your ROI calculation isn't valuable for me. I don't really believe it. What I want is the stories. How are you truly changing lives? How are you impacting people? Give me the name, the face, the heart behind what you're doing. Tell me the story of the person that you helped build their courage so that they could be promoted to that next role. Tell me about the person who you were able to retain because they had a better development career path. Tell me about how you're truly impacting people, not just the numbers that are behind it.
I want to see if I can put you on a spot here. It doesn't matter what their names are or a department, but if a CFO asked you that today, do you have a story off the top of your mind that you would share with them?
I do. So we run a program called Speak with Impact right now at BDO, and it's helping build gravitas, executive speaking, limiting disfluencies, presentation skills. And I had someone recently who had joined the firm. They had been here about a year. They'd never had any type of presentation or speaking program before because they're an accountant and their whole life is around numbers and they don't really know how to speak to people. And they had joined, they were meeting with a new client. They had come through Speak with Impact. A week later, they were prepping to meet with that client. Their confidence level, according to them, was 100%. I'm just exaggerating. I don't have an exact number right now, but let's say 100% higher. They went in feeling confident. They approached it differently in the sense of it wasn't a death by PowerPoint slide with all these numbers. It was a conversation. And at the end of it, the client said to them that was one of the best meetings that they had ever had. And they feel like they really connected with this person and they look forward to building a relationship. We signed a contract for a significant 7-figure amount about 3 weeks later. From that, the person came back and said, that would not have been possible if I didn't go through this program to build up my confidence and to learn how to speak to somebody just on a normal one-on-one basis rather than feeling like I'm an auditor.
That's a wonderful story. Just yesterday, I was at the celebration party for one of our big clients is BART, Bay Area Rapid Transit. And before it was emerging leader cohort. And before it started, this woman came up to me and said, I'm an engineer. And I just want to say thanks to Learn It because I'm all about numbers, but really not, comfortable going out and speaking. And for the very first time, I was able to sit down with somebody internally and just share with them the numbers, but present it in a story style. And she's like, that's completely different shift in my mindset. So it was super cool that happened yesterday. And it's like very close to what you're talking about.
Yeah, I love that. And we've got to collect more of those. I'll share one other quick one.
Please do.
We run a annual event called the Skill Up Summit. And it's a virtual event. It's a half day long. And this year we included neurodiversity as a topic in it. And afterwards, there was a woman who reached out to me to say, I had never heard about this. And the way that you spoke about it, not me, but the way that the speaker spoke about it and what I learned has helped me identify that my son, I think, is autistic. And I need to take him in to have him evaluated as that. And so there's so many different value propositions that we bring beyond just this traditional training, learning and development. We plant seeds, and these seeds can grow in ways that we may not see or be able to capture in a level 1, level 2, or level 3. Like I wouldn't have captured that in a level 1, level 2, level 3, but through that human to human connection and that story, I can now share that to others. So long story short, it's not always about data. It's about measuring data and the stories that go along with it, the human side.
And I like what I've heard you say before. Some of the value that we bring is you help build confidence, mobility, even equity. And those are things you can't measure those on your Excel spreadsheet. You really can't. I want to switch gears a little bit and get back to your book. Let's talk a little bit about the value creation compass you have in there, because I think that is something that's very valuable for people in the L&D world. In all kinds of worlds, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and this book, yes, it's targeted towards learning and development, talent development, but you really could lift and shift the language. The same with the trusted learning advisor. At the core, it's all about consulting skills and being a strategic business partner. So it's not just limited to us. So the value creation compass is a framework that's designed to help us articulate what the business actually values and then how what we do can align to that. So there's 4 quadrants, like a compass, north, south, east, west. So the north is empowering people. So if you start to break down the structure of an organization, they are nothing without the people. So that's why our industry exists. It's all about the people. So that's where we're focusing on that already. But that's where you build skills, you're growing leadership, you're boosting confidence, you have capability gaps. But the key is going beyond just completions and to start connecting these outcomes with real measurable, tangible, but also intangible, like retention, talent mobility. Anyway, people, North Star. Then we've got the business growth. So, of course, a business can't exist if it's not growing. That's the ultimate goal for organizations, is continue to grow. We can impact that. So we're tying learning there to growth outcomes like onboarding speed or client satisfaction or sales performance or even innovation readiness. These are all ways that our programs can help an organization grow. Then we've got, let's see, north, east, south, building organizational resilience. This is something that we overlook often, and we help organizations through change. One, I have to be careful with these words. One thing we learned during COVID is I found L&D was elevated. Overnight, we had to shift to this virtual environment, and people didn't know how to use Zoom, and they didn't know how to deliver meetings in a virtual environment or even deliver training in a virtual environment. All of a sudden, we became important. We helped our organizations pivot. We are the change makers. We are the transformation architects. We help support our people by helping them navigate change, by helping them reduce burnout, by helping them improve well-being and cultural alignment. All of that is within this organizational resilience. And the last area is around customer value. Of course, without our customers, organizations wouldn't exist. And everything that we do affects that end user. We affect the end user as well. So whether that's a client or a patient, a customer, a community, this is where we're focusing on the customer experience, CX. Customer trust, we can help that. Loyalty, outcomes. If you prepare your people better, your customers feel it. And that's a powerful line of sight into value. So long story short, too late. These four areas are helping to reframe our L&D language to more of the business language. So it's shifting how we think about what we do in a way that you can speak and use the same language of the business. And so what I encourage readers to do is take the compass to your business partner and use it as a discussion tool to ask and discuss and understand from your business partner, where's their key area of focus in those four quadrants, so that you can start to share a common language.
So Keith, like learn it. So we're, an outsourced vendor. How would our learning strategists use that with our partner on the client side?
Exact way I just shared it. Use it as a tool of discussion with your partner and ask. I wouldn't maybe like directly ask, but use it as a way to drive the conversation with the four quadrants, the four area of business focus, to figure out where is their biggest gap, their biggest struggle, biggest pain point, using their language so that you can focus in on that area rather than on the areas that we think are important.
And one thing on your compass you talked about, I want to kind of circle back to, is business resilience. I was just reading an article in McKinsey literally 5 minutes before we got on. It's about learning organizations and how it helps foster agility and innovation. And I assume that you talk about that a lot because to me, sometimes it doesn't even matter what skills you're learning. It's just that your mind is open to being able to continue to learn and grow and be curious.
100%. So Satya Nadella coined this term. I love it, but it's moving from a know-it-all to a learn-it-all. Ha ha ha. So it works out for you with your name. But that's the end goal, is we have to be learn-it-alls. We no longer have the luxury to say, I know it all. It's not possible. The way that change is happening and will continue to happen exponentially, none of us can know it all. So that's moving from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset and being a learn-it-all. And that creates agile, adaptable, resilient talent. And that is the biggest skill set that we could unilaterally want for everybody in the organization, because organizations are going to constantly be changing, pivoting, growing, and you need talent that can adapt along with it. Fixed mindset, growth mindset, know it all to learn it all.
Thank you. That's great. The other thing I was talking about, which is interesting, is that sometimes you find that the frontline workers are more malleable and open to learning even than the managers themselves. And I know you talk a lot about making sure that people don't get left behind when it comes to these development opportunities, and that's really important.
It is. It's not just frontline workers, it's everyone. And I'll give an example. I'm in a professional service firm now. We get paid because of our expertise, because of our knowledge. That's what our clients are paying for. We are the product. This is the product. And so we're one of the biggest perpetrators of this know-it-all mindset. And it's getting everyone in the firm to recognize you cannot know it all. You have to learn it all. But in order to be able to do that, we have to have a strong learning culture. It has to be embedded from the top down, which doesn't always happen. A lot of times organizations are trying to push it from the bottom up. So you've got L&D down here trying to say, hey, learning culture, but it's not embedded throughout. And that's where you have this tension that exists. So it's, long story short, not just for frontline workers. Every single one of us need to have this lifelong learning mindset, this learn it all mindset.
Is there if you're an organization where at the top they don't model learning and they don't believe in it, can you still have it permeate throughout the organization, or you think it's going to be pushing a rock up a hill?
Honestly, it depends. It depends on the culture. So I want to be careful generalizing because I've experienced both. If you're in that situation, one of the best approaches is finding champions. Finding champions at different levels who can be your advocates. One of the strategies that I have taken for a number of years is I try to keep myself out of it. I try not to say, I think, I feel, I believe, because it's very easy for somebody to come back and say, yeah, well, you're in learning. Of course you would say that. So instead, I bring in research, World Economic Forum, McKinsey, Deloitte. I bring in others from my network. I bring in providers like LearnIt. I bring in sometimes competitors who have been through maybe this challenge that we face successfully to talk to the stakeholders. So it's finding ambassadors, champions to help elevate, to help amplify the work that we do, because we cannot do it alone. But again, it's contextualized to the culture that you're in. I was in one Fortune 500 company where I spent about 4 years there, and I realized at about year 3, I had peaked at what I could do. They had no interest in creating a learning culture. I was being stopped at every area. And so for me and my mental health, I spent about another year trying, and then I realized, you know what? I need to take my expertise and experience someplace else where it's wanted. And so it's a real reflection that sometimes you have to step back and look upon. Does this organization want me to thrive, me being learning and development, talent development, or are we just set up for failure?
I think that's important because at the end of the day, nobody's going to take ownership over your personal growth and development more than you. And if you sit back and you wait, you're gonna be waiting quite a while. You have to, like we talked about earlier, you have to be proactive. I got a question. So your first book came out in 2023. Is there anything that you no longer agree with that you've shifted your mindset on, or anything you've really doubled down on?
I am sure that if I went back and read it, which I have not done in about a year or so, there would be things that stand out. I would say holistically, I still believe in everything that's in there because it is about building relationships. It's about building trust. It's about how do you overcome stakeholder objectives in a meaningful and respectful way? How do you develop your skills as a strategic business partner, trusted learning advisor? What's not in there at all is anything on AI because it was written in 2022-ish. And so Gen AI wasn't a thing at that point. So if I did an update, it would be, you should be leveraging Gen AI as a practitioner or really anybody. If you are not using AI at this point, you are late. You are behind. We all had this beautiful starting line and we all were there together. And there are some of us who are just forging ahead, and there are still L&D practitioners today who are like, I don't want to use it. I'm afraid of it. It's going to take my job. It's not going to take your job. The person that knows how to use it, they're going to take your job.
100%. I mean, if you're not jumping in 2 feet head first, you're stacking the odds against yourself. I mean, at this point, that's really what it is. And that kind of leads me to where we're going next before we wrap up is, what do you see the future of L&D? Do you when it comes to Gen AI, instructor led learning, micro learning, all these different things? Do you think eventually the live instructor will go away, or do you think that AI will be a supplement to help create retention, or both?
So I think there's multiple questions there. I want to pick up on the live instructor. I don't think that's going anywhere anytime soon. In fact, at BDO, I'm so proud that we've been able to pivot back to focusing more on that live instructor because we want to build those connections and build those relationships. And with asynchronous learning, you can't do that. I love the synchronous learning. So I personally don't see the instructor led human component at risk. Where I see it evolving, and I'm not going to make a prediction because this is just my perception, and I don't want to give a timeline, 5, 10 years, whatever. I will say that L&D as we understand it today will not be as relevant or necessary in a certain number of years, let's say 10 years. And by that, what I mean is this box that L&D sits in, instructional designer. That one is probably the biggest one for me, maybe even e-learning designer. They have to evolve. And one of the challenges I see with our industry is that many people are stuck in this little box of, I just do training. I just do learning and development. If you have the word just before anything that you do, you are at risk. We no longer have the luxury of just being this one thing. As I mentioned earlier, I call myself a problem solver. I'm not worried about my future because organizations will always have problems. And I will always be there to help solve those types of problems in the same way that learning has pivoted over the last number of years. If you are not willing to pivot, to be agile, to be adaptable, to get outside of this box that you're in, then yes, you are at risk. I think that L&D will evolve to being more of that problem-solving individual, that problem-solving function. And that's one of the things I pride myself on my team. And I mentioned again earlier that half of what I do has nothing to do with learning and development. Sometimes I'm just listening. I'm a coach. Sometimes I'm booking restaurant reservations for my stakeholder just because. Why not? I want them to know that I'm the person they can call when they have a problem, and I will help them solve it. In no way do they think I am a know-it-all, because I'll be the first to say I'm not, but I'm a learn-it-all. I will figure it out. And if I can't figure it out, I have a vast network. I'll find you somebody who can. So the reputation that my team and I have, we are GSDers. Get stuff
Get
done.
shit done.
Exactly. Doesn't matter if it's learning and development or not. And so we've got to get out of this mindset that I'm just learning and development. I'm just training. This is just what I do. Figure out what your stakeholder needs and help them solve that problem. And you will not be at risk.
I think that's great, and that's a great place to wrap up. What I hear you saying, and it's so true, is that you and your team are willing to step in. Even no matter what it is, if somebody needs help on something, it does. You're not going to say, the worst thing you could say is, I just would do L&D. No, if somebody needs something, you roll up your sleeves and get it done. That's
exactly
so fantastic. You don't have to have the title. You don't have, people build influence and trust by being the ones who are willing to jump in and help out. That's what keeps you going. That's what keeps great organizations going. To kind of recap,
the three most dangerous words in any organization: not my job.
Yeah.
Not my job. If you say that, you are putting yourself in a box, you're putting a lid on it, and you're showing people that you are not a team player and you are not necessary. For us, it's never not my job. It may be, right now I can't get to this, but I'm going to get to it. I'm going to find you the person to help you. But it's never, I'm sorry, that's not my job.
Yeah, no, that's so true. To kind of go through what we talked about a lot. And I could literally keep you on here for another 2 hours with all the questions I have. But we started off, we talked about the shift in mindset from knowledge economy to value economy. We talked about your book. We talked about how to support and add value to different stakeholders, especially about finance, Loved your value creation compass and how your readers can get value out of that, and how L&D is going to shift over time. But if people are open-minded and curious and learn-it-alls instead of know-it-alls, they're going to be able to evolve right along with them. So, Keith,
Absolutely.
Dr. Keith, one more thing you want to leave our listeners with?
In terms of the value economy, every single one of us, regardless of your job title, your function, your business, we all should be value seekers and value creators. And so when I talk about evolving from knowledge economy to value economy, we should, each one of us, be able to answer, what value are you bringing? What value are you providing to your organization? If you cannot answer that question, please spend some time reflecting on it. One, it allows you to show up stronger when someone's asking or you're needing to justify. And then two, as a human, it reminds you that you do have value in what you do. And for those of you learning development practitioners, remember that learning changes lives. That's our ultimate goal. That's the pinnacle of why we exist in what we do. Whether you're an ISD, e-learning designer, project manager, we are all working to that higher goal of changing lives.
Thank you. And so, listeners, there's a couple things. If you know somebody who's down on themselves, or maybe they feel like they can't learn. I mean, Keith is a high school dropout, and now the guy's got a PhD. It can happen. We can make it work. And if you're somebody who's an L&D leader, and maybe you're feeling like, hey, we're getting passed up, we need to change, and your team feels like that, send them this episode. They'll get a lot of value out of it. And more importantly, they need to buy Keith's book, Hidden Value. But start off with the first one as well, the Trusted Learning Advisor. Keith, where else can our listener base connect with you?
LinkedIn. Very active on LinkedIn.
Even though you didn't come across me for since our last.
That's the algorithm's fault. That's the algorithm's fault. But luckily, LinkedIn brought us back together.
Yeah, brought us back together with our mutual friends, Andy Storch, Jeffrey Roche, everybody. And Keith, I hope you don't. I hope it doesn't take 25 years for us to talk again.
Definitely not.
All right, everybody. So until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and have a great day. Thank you, Dr. Keith.
You want to go to where the energy is. Find somebody who actually believes in it, right? And then help them to be successful. That's what we call the keystone change.